Getting a budget camera isn't about getting the cheapest camera. It's about getting a camera that fits your shooting style and your budget. And luckily, budget cameras are now better than ever because camera tech has come a long way. And with phones getting so good, a lot of really good cameras get forgotten. So let's check out the best budget cameras for different shooting styles and more importantly, for your budget. Also, I'll leave links down below for all of the cameras we talk about. Now, let's start off with the best hybrid camera on a moderate budget with cheaper ones to follow. And that is the Canon R50. The reason I love the Canon R50 specifically for beginners is because this camera is dead simple to use. It actually has several automatic modes on the mode dial that actually produce good results. But my favorite is Creative Assist, where you simply tell the camera things like brightness, background blur, contrast, and the camera does the rest for you. And if you want a more manual shooting experience, it also has a really good button layout that's easy to navigate. The button layout is pretty minimal with only a single command dial and no scroll wheel, but the easiest and fastest way to use this camera is actually the side articulating touchscreen on the back that gives you complete access over everything including touch autofocus. And it also has an electronic viewfinder which photographers will appreciate. The one downside of the Canon R50 is a small battery, which is pretty common on a budget camera like this, and for casual and lifestyle shooting, the battery will be just fine. Now, let's not forget about the actual images. The image quality is genuinely impressive. The Canon R50 has a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is perfect for this type of camera. You get a ton of detail and clarity for both photos and videos, plus the gorgeous warm Canon colors, which the brand is known for. And of course, it also has class-leading autofocus with subject detect for animal, people, and cars, so for pretty much any kind of shooting style, you're going to get good results. When it comes to shooting photos, the R50 shoots crazy fast at 12 to 15 frames per second, and in JPEG mode, it can also shoot for a really long time. However, when shooting RAW photos, it only shoots 7 photos in a row. And you definitely want to shoot RAW if you're going to be heavily editing your photos. So the Canon R50 is a great action camera, but only in JPEG mode, and I don't recommend this for RAW shooters that also want to shoot action. But if you're a RAW shooter and you're only doing slow and deliberate shooting, the Canon R50 will be just fine. When it comes to video, it shoots 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, but it's actually downsampled from 6K. And this is actually going to give you a 40% boost in detail and clarity over normal 4K. Sadly, there is no 4K at 60 frames per second for 2x slow motion. However, you can still shoot full HD at 60 and 120 frames per second for super slow motion. And you also have 8-bit color in regular video or 10-bit color in HDR-PQ mode for light color grading. But if you want a flat log profile for heavy color grading, you should actually check out the older brother to the Canon R50, the Canon R50V, which is more of a video-centric camera. And the Canon R50V is also $100 cheaper if you buy the body alone, but it is more expensive with a lens, which is why it's not on this list. But I did put out a full review on the channel, so check that out if you're more of a video shooter. Now, if you're a beginner hybrid shooter that wants to do casual, everyday lifestyle photography and a bit of video, the Canon R50 is pretty hard to beat. The design is fantastic, the image quality is fantastic, there's not really more you could ask for. Well, maybe you could ask for a lower price. So here's an ultra budget alternative, and that is the Canon M50 for less than half the price. It's a very similar sensor, pretty much the same colors, very similar design, and it also has a touchscreen and an EVF with plenty of automatic modes for easy shooting. And it also has very good autofocus with face and eye tracking, but it is not as good as the Canon R50. In photo mode, it shoots 10 frames per second with more raw photos in a row than the R50, so technically the M50 is better. However, in 4K mode, the M50 only shoots 4K at 24 frames per second with no option for 30, and there's also a really big crop and it's only 8-bit with a ton of rolling shutter. The 4K is just not good. The M50 is more of a 1080p camera because it can shoot 1080p at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second, which is more than good enough for most social media and casual shooting. And it also has 120 frames per second in 720p if you want to try out the mode, but the image quality isn't that great. The main thing missing from the Canon M50 are the video features, but for photo, you'll get almost exactly the same performance and a very similar shooting experience. So if you want a Canon R50 on a budget, the Canon M50 is a great choice. However, if you want to shoot photos and videos and you want to do a lot of heavy editing and really make something artistic and spend even less money, I have not one, but two cameras for you. And that is the Sony a6400 and the Sony ZV-E10. The two cameras are actually very similar on the inside. They both have a gorgeous 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, and besides the usual resolution and clarity, these sensors do two things really well. Number one is dynamic range, which is the amount of information your sensor can see. So when it comes to editing raw photos or log video, you have a ludicrous amount of information to play with, and you can really dial in your color grade. And the sensor is also incredible in low light. You can shoot as high as 10,000 ISO for photos or 3200 for video, allowing you to basically shoot anywhere and any time because you have so much flexibility with your image. And the autofocus is fantastic in terms of accuracy with face and eye tracking, and you've probably heard that Sony has some of the best autofocus in the industry, and the autofocus even in this older camera will not let you down. As for photos and videos, both cameras shoot at 10 frames per second with a really large frame buffer of 33 to 36 photos in a row in RAW and JPEG. So both cameras are fantastic for action shooting and wipe the floor with the Canon R50. When it comes to video, they both shoot 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, but it's also downsampled from 6K. And just like the Canon R50, you get pretty much a 40% boost in detail. Plus, you also have Full HD at 24, 30, 60, all the way to 120 frames per second. So if you don't need 4K and you're mainly a Full HD shooter, both of these cameras are going to be fantastic. But best of all, both cameras also have S-Log2 and S-Log3, plus all of the major Sony cinema profiles. But the most important thing to note is that the ZV-E10 and the A6400 are very different in terms of design. The A6400 is more of a photo body with a traditional mode dial, EVF, and tilt screen that flips up to the top for vlogging. However, it only has touch autofocus on the back screen and does not give you touch controls over your other settings. And the ZV-E10 is more of a vlogging and content creation camera with a single button to switch between photo, video, and slow motion, plus a button on top to enhance your background blur, and a 3-capsule microphone for solid in-camera audio, but I do recommend using an external microphone. On top of that, it has a side articulating screen for vlogging, and there is no EVF, but it does have touch autofocus. And if you're confused, the A6400 is mainly for photo shooters, where the ZV-E10 II is more of a video and content creation camera. But either way, you can't go wrong because these cameras are so similar. Now, if we're talking about the cheapest camera, this can get a bit tough because of the lower price. You are usually sacrificing performance. However, in this ultra budget niche, there is one camera that still gives you spectacular image quality and only takes away the features that most beginners don't actually need, and that is the Canon R100. It's actually a budget version of the Canon R50 and the M50 with all of the fancy bells and whistles taken out. The R100 has a very similar button layout and grip to the R50 and M50, and it also has a built-in flash and viewfinder. However, the screen on the back is fixed and is not touch sensitive. But if you do want touch controls, you can actually wirelessly connect your phone to the camera and get a live feed of whatever your camera sees and also change all of your major settings. But one thing to note is that the Canon R50 can also do this. Inside the Canon R100, you have a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is very similar to the Canon R50 and M50. So you get the same level of detail and clarity along with the Canon colors. However, some of you guys might notice that the Canon R100 colors are not as vivid and saturated as the Canon R50 and look closer to the Canon M50 colors, but you can adjust this inside the camera. But a lot of you guys may not care or notice. And the autofocus in the Canon R100 is also great. It has Canon's dual pixel autofocus, the same one as the Canon M50, and it does a really good job with 99.9% of subject matter, and for most beginners on a budget, you will be just fine. And you can also easily keep up with moving subject matter as well. As for shooting photos and videos, the R100 only shoots slightly slower than the Canon R50 at 6 frames per second, and you can shoot up to 1,000 JPEGs in a row, however with only 6 RAW photos in a row. So the Canon R100 is definitely best for someone that's doing slow and deliberate shooting, and it's definitely not an action camera. As for video, the Canon R100 does shoot 4K, but it has a massive crop, and the image quality isn't great. Your phone is probably going to do a better job. But if you're only shooting Full HD, you can actually shoot as high as 60 frames per second with a special slow motion mode for 120 frames per second that looks absolutely epic. But it only shoots standard colors in 8-bit with no option for 10-bit colors in HDRP-Q mode, so it's not really a great video camera. The Canon R100 is best for someone who wants a budget-friendly way of doing photos and Full HD video And other than that, you're pretty limited. But if you want the best pricing on the R100 or the other cameras we talk about, check out the links down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.